Well, hello everybody. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to set a 4x3 shower pan. Now this one is for a tile shower. Sometimes it's a full fiberglass shower where you've got the walls and it's one piece. It's similar, but on those you're going to have to cut out for your valves. But on your tile pans, you're just going to be setting this base and they'll tile the walls up around your valve. So to get started, the first thing you're going to do is check the dimensions on your framing. Make sure your framer's right. If it's out, if it's too small, if it's too big, you're not going to set your shower pan. You're going to call the framer, get him back over there to fix that problem for you. But first thing you need to do is cut out for your drain. Now your fiberglass shower pans have a special little drain here. Now we are in the training center and this pan has actually been set several times, so a lot of this stuff's already done for us. But you're going to have to cut this hole in the middle of the floor. As long as you're dealing with, you're on the second story or you're dealing with a crawl space. But if it's a slab, you're going to have to measure and make sure that pipe hit right where it needs to be, or you're going to have to chip up some concrete and move it. Or they used a tub box and you've got a nice square hole there where you can move that pipe around. It's a little bit more difficult to do on a concrete slab on that first floor than on a second floor or a crawl space because you can't get underneath it. So this is a 4x3 shower pan. It's really 4 foot by like 34 inches. So check your drain, check your measurements on that, and then come back and measure out your shower cavity. And somebody's already cut me a hole here. This one's right at the 24 inches that I want, and it's right at 16 and a half on the center there, which should work out pretty well for us. The thing about this is you're going to want to make sure this hole is big enough that this drain will fit through it. You don't want it touching on the edges, you don't want it catching on these little side pieces, because if it does that, when people get in and out of it, it's going to squeak, it's going to hit that floor, and it's going to make noise, and you don't want that to happen. These pans actually will flex a little bit when you stand in them. So make sure your hole's cut out in the right spot and big enough that that's not going to rub. The next thing you're going to do before you do anything else, clean up. Alright, so we've cleaned up our working space here, which is something you got to do. You got to get rid of those wood chips and those nails and whatever might be down here. Be looking for other foreign materials and debris that could set your shower pan off, because this thing has got to be level. The next thing you're going to want to do, get you some tar paper. Sometimes these guys come with a little mat, kind of like that stuff that landscapers use when they don't want weeds growing through their beds, but we use this tar paper, which is what goes under shingles. It works pretty well, but you're going to roll out your piece. Now it can overlap on the walls here. You're going to want to get you a razor knife. I've seen these guys tear this stuff, but if you tear it, it doesn't really work out too well for you. Go ahead and cut that. Go throw that in the bin, and trash bin outside. Let's get this thing centered a little better. Find our hole. Here's our hole right here. Go ahead and cut that out. This ain't got to be pretty. The whole purpose of this tar paper or that cloth mat is so the pan doesn't squeak. These things have little feet on them, and if you don't put anything under it, it's going to want to rub and it'll squeak on this floor. And that's the last thing you want when you're dealing with new construction or really anything. If you're replacing a shower on a service call, you don't want that to squeak, because then they just think you're horrible, you're the worst plumber in the world. Alright, we've got this laid down. So let's grab our shower pan. Before we get too far along here, you're going to want to go ahead and put this drain on. Now, like I said, this one has been set a few times because we're out in the training center. It comes apart. You've got a rubber grommet there and a paper one. You want to hang on to those. Putty, get you some putty. It is cold out here, so this stuff is kind of hard to do, but you're going to want to rub it around in your hands. Get you a little Play-Doh snake. Put that around the drain. And tear the excess off, throw it back in your bucket. What I normally like to do is mash this stuff down so it's not such a big whump there. Get it on there good. Now, a lot of times it helps if you have a helper, but you should be able to line this up pretty good. And they did, the guys who did this before, they put some pipe dope on here. That does help you get that extra turn or two in, but right now it's messing with me. Good thing it did, because I forgot to put these guys on. All right. You want to go ahead and screw that thing down pretty good. Get it as tight as you can. Now we're going to come back later and we're going to tighten this down. Now, if you're dealing with a slab, you have to cut that pipe off, get it in the right place, and you're going to have to glue this as you drop it. But we're on a crawl space here, or we could be on the second floor because we got a subfloor. We're going to be able to access this from underneath to hook our P-trap up and run our drains. But for right now, we're just setting the shower pan. So, put it in the hole. Try not to mess up your tar paper. It's gonna be tight. There you go. That's the first half of it. Now, you got it in there, you got it tight. Get your level out. Check it. Check it. Check it. And check this one back here as well. Now, as far as level on a shower pan like this one, I've never really had much problems with it because it sits right on the floor, and most of the time the framers are pretty good at having this stuff leveled up. Now when it comes to a tub, tubs are a little different because they could be this way, they could be that way, depending on how you got it in the hole. But this is pretty well anchored. You're not going to hear me say this a whole lot, but this is one of the places where your little impact driver is going to come in handy. I don't necessarily like using these on a whole lot of things because a lot of stuff in plumbing has a finish. You could strip stuff out. These things do have a lot of power to them. But on something like this, we're drilling into a 2x4. This is rough end stuff. You're going to need something. I mean, you can do it by hand, but it'll kill you. Now, some of your tubs have little dimples and stuff right here. And they're going to want you to screw it through that. What we found out on these tile shower pans, you don't want to do that because you could crack this all up. This is a little bit different than just your typical fiberglass. So what we do, and now, like I said, this one's been set a bunch of times and I actually have little holes already for us here. But you're going to want to put that screw right there on the edge of this. You're going to catch that screw head right there on top of it. This is just to hold it in place so your tile guys can do their job. There you go. Don't crank it down too much where you rip that. It's just there to hold it. And you're going to put screws all the way around this thing, just like that, catching it. And it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to run around and finish this thing up. Looks pretty good. It ain't going nowhere. Now your tile guys are going to drop their stuff in here and you're not going to see this. It's going to be tile all the way down. And it's going to look really nice. But before you leave, we're going to glue all this together, and then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come back to this drain, and I'm going to show you a trick. Once you've got everything else done, the last thing you're going to do is come back to this drain. You're going to want to take the strainer part off here. No impact. You do this by hand. And the reason why you do this by hand is because these little holes here that the screws go in, they're just plastic. I have seen some that have a threaded metal brass piece in there, but not so often. Those come around every now and again. But you don't want to strip out that plastic, so do it by hand. That way you can feel it. Now here's the trick. I got Old Faithful and Old Reliable here. I'm going to get one of them all the way out to where you can catch these little knots. Now you can just kind of turn that around by hand, but the trick is you're going to want to get this other pair on it like that. That way you can really get a good tightening down on. And as you do it, you're going to see this putty start coming out. This is something that causes us problems a lot in the long run. But you're going to get that as tight as you can, and then don't leave it like this. Come back, clean that putty up. I mean, I know you're at rough end, and you got cleaning ladies and all kinds of stuff going to happen later on. But clean that up the best you can, and you can recycle this stuff kind of, as long as it doesn't have a bunch of wood chips and stuff in it. I keep reusing this stuff over and over again, as long as it's not dirty. And then the last thing you're going to do is put your shower strainer back on. Now these things, the chrome ones, do come with this blue stuff all over it. Just leave that on there. I know people step on it, it gets all weird looking. Let the trim guys take that off. Now it is our policy around here that the trim guys check these drains, because we've had so much trouble with them later to where somebody didn't tighten them all the way down. But there you go. That's it. Now plumber's going to disappear for a few weeks. They're going to finish the tile around here, and we'll be done. Well, thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned something. This is pretty simple. Now, of course, doing your drain and your P-trap and stuff like that can be a little difficult, but it's not so bad once you get the hang of it. And like I said, especially if you're on a crawl space or you're on the second floor, you know, you've got a subfloor, you can access it from underneath. It's pretty easy. Slabs are a little more difficult, but you don't have to worry about that pipe, because hopefully your slab guy did his job right. Well, thanks a lot, guys.